Have you ever been in conversation with someone who seemed so knowledgeable and insightful, as if they could think on their feet and effortlessly respond with the most brilliant ideas? Well, you can be this person too. And in this video, I'm going to share 5 books I've found over more than 11 years as both an internationally published academic and as a successful entrepreneur to show you exactly how you can become the most interesting person in the room. And the first book on this list is Social Ethics by Jane Zambati and Thomas Mapps. In today's polarized world, everyone is talking about their moral and ethical opinions, but very few of us are actually critically reflecting on them. Instead, most of us prefer to stay within the comfort zone of our preconceived worldview. Therefore, one way you can instantly stand out among the crowd is by studying as many viewpoints and arguments as possible on a number of controversial issues. And this book is perfect for accomplishing this, covering numerous topics from abortion, euthanasia, and the death penalty to terrorism, world hunger, animal rights, and much more. This anthology features classic articles by the most notable thinkers on each of these policy issues, including authors you probably agree with and disagree with. In fact, if you look at people like Sam Harris on the left and Ben Shapiro on the right, one of the reasons they are so well spoken and always seem to have a response to everything is because they too have studied all sides of the issues. And if we want to be able to think on our feet like this, then we need to make it a habit to regularly read and reflect upon viewpoints we disagree with. In fact, when I published my first book on value theory in 2013, it was a key article in this book by the thinker Stephen Nathanson that actually helped me refine and propose a new theoretical framework for decision making. So I highly recommend reading this book if you want to be able to have an informed conversation on a wide range of topics. Which brings us to the next book on this list, The Critique of Pure Reason by Immanuel Kant. This book is virtually unknown to most people, but it is unquestionably one of the most important books written in the 18th century. And its influence has had a huge impact on multiple fields of study today, including cognitive science and psychology, political science and economics, physics, and even religious thinking. Because this book is so incredibly technical, if you're a beginner to this work, I would recommend reading Kant's Critique of Pure Reason, a critical guide by James O'Shea, as the author breaks down Kant's arguments and ideas into more digestible forms. But let's understand why we really need to read this book if we want to be able to converse intelligently and come up with new ideas on the spot that make us genuinely interesting to talk to. To understand this, let's play a round of pool together. Notice that when one ball hits another, the other that it hits moves. Well, duh, right? So how do we then go on to speak about what we've just witnessed? We say the ball caused the other ball to move, right? But if we're completely honest here, we can't observe anything called a cause. I mean, can you point to it? No, you can't. Instead, we simply see one event happen after another event. And we're not just nitpicking words here, there literally is no such physical thing as a cause that we can directly observe, even scientifically speaking. Kant wrote about this problem extensively, and he came up with a response, namely that causation is not a physical thing, but instead is part of the underlying structure of the human mind. In other words, causation is simply a way our minds make sense of the world. And modern neuroscience has come to embrace this idea as well. In fact, even this one concept from Kant's work has gone on to make huge impacts on our modern day understandings of physics, chemistry, biology, statistics, and cognitive science. For instance, in statistics and the hard sciences, it has led to the idea that a good scientific theory is one that repeatedly makes the most accurate predictions, not one that directly observes causes. And in cognitive science, this idea that there is a certain innate structure of the human mind has led to a host of theories in the behavioral sciences, in political science, and even in linguistics. Therefore, in a very real sense, to understand Kant's work is to understand how to make genuinely interesting connections among the foundations of some of today's most influential ideas, connections that most people would never even consider. Another way to make more connections between different concepts and different fields and do it faster is through short form, which conveniently summarizes and offers insightful commentary on your favorite books. I use this often to sort quickly through the books I want to take a deeper dive into, and also as a way of quickly reviewing ones I've already read. You can grab a 20% discount off your annual subscription by visiting the link in the pinned comment below, so feel free to check that out. The third book on this list will help you have truly intelligent and meaningful conversations on one of the most important topics in today's world: artificial intelligence and machine learning. And that book is Neural Networks from Scratch in Python by Harrison Kinsley. This book is not just some introduction to the concept of AI. In fact, I started seeking out this book at a point when I had been reading a lot about AI and machine learning, but still found I couldn't wrap my head around them. Instead, what I really wanted was to take a deep dive into the inner structures and processes of exactly how AI and machine learning work. And this book will do that for you, even if you're just a beginner with no coding experience. So much technology in our modern world is being transformed by AI, but I've found that the more we understand this vital technology, the more we'll be able to broaden the scope of our conversation with so many more people in different industries and of different backgrounds. As soon as I read this book, I finally could have real informed conversations with not only people like engineers and software developers, but I was able to converse even more confidently with entrepreneurs, doctors, and others about how their industries would be affected by AI and have an informed position on it either way. Of course, I'm still no AI expert, okay? But this book has helped me see and speak about this technology in a whole new way. And that brings us to the next book on our list, Imagined Communities by Benedict Anderson, a classic book that virtually everyone who pursues an advanced degree in history, political science, or sociology has read or has heard of. I debated a bit whether I should put this book or a history book on this list because I do think reading history books is crucial. But I decided on this book because if I had to choose just one, this book does a great job of teaching us both a good bit of history and also a great deal of social science. And once again, it therefore offers a broad range of knowledge that helps us think on our feet in any type of conversation. Consider the idea of a nation. Think about the nation in which you live. Was there always a nation there? How far back does it go? And what kind of nation do you live in? Anderson was a pioneer in analyzing the concept of a nation, and his main argument here is that nations are inventions of the human mind. As the title suggests, they're imagined. But why is this important to any of us? Well, because we take our nations very seriously. So seriously that we fought countless wars and in many cases subjected people to untold suffering, all in the name of our nations. So then it's something we ought to have a better understanding of, right? You see, as Anderson explains, nations really didn't exist, with maybe the exception of England, up until the 19th century. Before then, people around the world lived under kingdoms or empires and identified themselves more closely with their immediate village or city. Events such as the French Revolution and the unification projects of Bismarck in Germany and Garibaldi in Italy essentially gave birth to the idea of a nation. In fact, the concept of Germany or Italy didn't even exist until the 1840s or so. Anderson explains that the spread of the written word and recognition of a common language initiated this process of nationhood. The idea that there was one people who shared a common bond and identity across a vast stretch of land. Although Anderson's core hypothesis here has been criticized by subsequent sociologists and historians, his book raises serious and important questions. Questions such as, is nationalism defined by civic principles people share, such as democracy and the rule of law? Or is nationalism instead defined by a common racial or ethnic identity? And if it's the latter, then what does that imply about nationalism? Is nationalism an outdated concept for the 21st century? Do new technologies and forms of communication make the idea of nations obsolete? However you end up answering these questions, they are all questions you'll be able to intelligently discuss after reading this book. Which brings us to the last book on this list, The Decline and Rise of Democracy, A Global History from Antiquity to Today by David Stasavage. Winston Churchill once said, "Democracy is the worst form of government except for all the others," by which he meant that despite democracy's flaws and often messiness, it is still preferable to the only real alternative, dictatorship. But I would go one step further. Democracy is actually great, not in spite of its messiness, but because of it. And it's this messy process of debate and compromise that needs to occur in order to create just outcomes. In fact, we should embrace this messiness. And although there are countless books on the topic of democracy out there, this one tops the list. Through an extensive and often statistical analysis of primary sources, Stasavage challenges conventional wisdom about democracy. Whereas most authors claim democracy developed in the 18th century, Stasavage shows that democracy has existed on every continent practically since the dawn of civilization. In his own words, democracy is a persistent and naturally occurring form of human organization. And whereas most authors claim a strong state is necessary for the development of democracy, Stasavage shows conclusively that the exact opposite is true. Democracy flourishes in places where centralized power is weakest. Instead, Stasavage claims the development of democracy mainly relies on geographic factors, including soil quality, population density, and ease of information gathering on the part of rulers. And this idea is truly groundbreaking, and it might be cause for hope. Many cynical leaders around the world have tended to view democracy as fragile, and in many cases it has been. But the very fact that certain geographic and demographic factors persist throughout time seems to suggest that even if democracy declines at some point, it will always bounce back. Democracy as a form of social organization, it seems to be just as persistent as such forms of social organization as the family or the neighborhood. I do encourage you to read other books on autocracy and democracy, but this book in itself is adequate for giving you a lot of intelligent talking points when in conversation, in part because much of Stasavage's book is a response to and refutation of previous authors' claims. What books would you put on this list to help someone become more well-rounded in knowledge and conversational ability? And which of the books from this list will you start with first? If you want to keep leveling up your critical thinking to make a massive impact, not only on your own life, but also on the lives of countless others, then be sure to watch this next video.